Christum Dominum Filium Dei, natum ex Patre, Deum ex Deo, natum ex Patre, lumen ex Lumine.
Welcome back to Discussions on Meade County Catholic Radio. I'm Deacon Greg Bevan, along with Amanda and Tony Brown. Let me first thank you two for sharing this very personal and heartbreaking story on the loss of your son, Cale.
Thank you. Welcome to our home, and Cale was a special person, and I appreciate your acknowledging us to talk about him.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about how special he was here in just a few minutes. You know, we have known each other for several years. Actually, I first ran into Tony on the football practice field in high school, and I learned real quickly then that if I could survive my head-on collisions with you, Tony, that the contacts that I would experience in our games would be a breeze. I can still remember those. And Amanda, we were in the same class. I must say you were much nicer to deal with than your husband was early on. But for those in our listening audience who may not be familiar with you, share with us your love story, so to speak, up to the time of Cale's death.
Tony and I kind of grew up together. We've known each other since we were little. We made our first communion together. Dated in high school. Got married right after I graduated. We got married in December of '68, and he got his draft notice in January of '69. So that year, I went to Fort Polk, and Fort Knox, Fort Polk, and then our son was born in September. So we were in Columbus, Georgia, then went back to Fort Polk. So that was kind of a rough time. Didn't have a nickel. But we didn't know that we were that bad off. We did okay with it. Figured out a way to do it. So we got out of the service. We came back to Brandenburg, and Tony started working for my dad at the car dealership. Raised our family. We had 3 boys and a girl. Anthony, Cale, Megan, and Ned. And had a good life. Tony worked hard. I got my nursing degree, and kids were good. Had a good community and a lot of family around. And then it all went to pot after that.
Tony, it sounded like you had a good person walking those early steps in life with you.
Oh, I did. I was I'm very grateful now that I understand the foundation my mom built for me in my faith, because we gravitate back to that. But after you get, we were fortunate to have all of our children go through St. John's. And Amanda was the ramrod of that, but she made sure everybody did the right thing and attended mass for the right reasons and all, and then you get in business and you get involved and you take things for granted, and I'm guilty of that. I was more or less I went to mass, but I was a ticket puncher. I did my thing and I was in full control. I thought.
Children are different, and you mentioned your children earlier, grandchildren too. Of course, adults are certainly different, but tell us a little bit about the uniqueness of Cale.
He was of course, our second child, and from the time he was up and walking and running, we lived at Happy Ridge in Brandenburg, and I knew when he and Anthony and I came home, and there's 8 or 10 kids their size in my yard, we had to go someplace. So we moved out to Johnstown, where we lived for 38 years. But he was a very unique kid in that he's very skilled with his hands and carpentry work and all, and a hard worker. He was one of these guys that very hard worker. And if you were his friend, his true friend, it was that way. He'd back you to wherever. And my other children are that way too. But he had that little knack about him that if people got around him and gravitated to him, that they understood that, man, this is the guy that's got your back, and that's who he was. We were great friends. We hunted and fished together, and with like the other ones. But he was the one that really took to fishing more than the other two, and we had big times, and I cherish those times.
Amanda, having children, and you see those differently too. Of course, you work in the healthcare business, or you have all your life, but the uniqueness of people is so special, isn't it?
Right. Everybody's got their own niche, what they do best. Cale had friends, and if he had $5 and you needed $6, he'd find the other dollar for you. He'd get it for you. He didn't have a lot of money. That didn't really seem to matter a whole lot. He worked hard for it, and took him a while. He was wide open. He was ready for. He experienced life to the edge. He really had a good time. He had a lot of good friends. He finally got himself settled down and went to Murray State, and was getting ready to graduate. He was going to graduate in December. And on December the 19th, he called us. On November the 19th, he called us and said, "I've got my graduation invitations for graduation in December. How many do you think I need to order?" I said, "Order as many as you can, because we're going to put an ad in the messenger that Cale Brown finally graduated, and we're going to send an invitation to everybody. It took you long enough to decide this was." And so we laughed. And that was the last. And he said, "I love you, Mom," and he hung up. That was the last thing we heard from him then. Until the next afternoon when we got the call that he wasn't with us. But
walk us through that time when you get that call.
It was about 8 o'clock that Thursday evening. Our youngest son Ned and I were home by ourselves. Tony and Anthony had gone to Louisville to a sportsman's club meeting, and our daughter Megan was a student at Western. She was in the nursing program there. And Ned and I were sitting on the couch, and I saw 2 cars pull down the driveway, and I could tell one of them was a police car. I could see the lights on it. And when they pulled down the driveway, they turned their lights off when they came down the drive. And I knew something was bad. So I told Ned, I said, "You sit on this couch and you do not get up. Do not, no matter what happens, you do not leave this couch, and you don't come down to the door." So I got up and went to the door, and there was 2 policemen there. And they wanted to know if I was by myself, and I said yes. And said, "Ma'am, is there somebody we can call?" And I said, "No." I said, "Tell me which one it is." And he said, "Do you have a son named Cale Brown?" And I said, "Yes." And they said he'd been found dead that evening. Well, the first instinct was, no, it wasn't Cale. Couldn't be that. So I was very distraught, and the police officers were very comforting, or tried to. And I'll never forget one of them. He got a call from his radio in his car. He heard that, and he said, and he went to the car, and he came back, and he said, "Ma'am, do you have a child in the house?" I said, "Yes, my son's in there." And he said, "He's called 911, and he thinks somebody's hurting his mom," because he heard me scream when they told me that. So I went in the house and got Ned and talked about the faith. He was a student at St. John's at the time, and so I went in and I told him what had happened. I said, "They've told us that Cale has died." And he said, "Do you think he had to stop at purgatory, or do you think he went straight to heaven?" And I said, "I know he's gone straight to heaven. He's okay, Ned."
He was well catechized.
He was. He was. He was in Sister Teresa's class at St. John's at the time. So we had. I called my dad because he was in town, and then we had to try. He came out to the house and he tried to help me find Tony. And we didn't have cell phones then. We knew where he was, so we had to call Tony and Anthony and get them home. Had to send somebody to Bowling Green to get Megan, and Cale was engaged to a girl, Allison Lusk, at the time, and so we had to get her too, get them home. And it was just like surreal. You just couldn't believe. We talked to him one night before and wasn't sick or anything, but come to find out that he had passed in his sleep, and they never could come up with a reason what happened. They said it was natural causes, and the guy told us, he said, "We have several of these cases a year of young people like your son who had no apparent illness," which made no sense. I was his mom. I should have known something was wrong with him, and I didn't. And so it was hard to, for the family and for the kids and Anthony. And of course, Anthony was the oldest, and he was just barely 2 years older than Cale. And they fought a lot as they grew up, as brothers do, but they had become friends, very close friends. And, some of your kids can voice how they feel, show their emotions, and some can't, and it's really hard for those that can't. And their hurt is deep. It may be deeper than some of the other ones. And when you saw all your kids together and that one wasn't there, it's still hard. There's still a hole. There'll always be a hole because Cale's not with us. And I remember Megan, she had to go back to Western eventually to go to school. And then later on she told me, she said, when I came home from Western, it was awful to come in the house because I looked at you and Dad and I could see your eyes. Mm. And she said that was the worst thing, to watch you all. And then Ned has had some friends who's had some deaths in their family. He said, Mom, they look like you and Dad did. Their eyes are so sad.
And that, Anthony and I were together. I was on the Fish and Wildlife Commission, and we were at a banquet in Louisville, and they finally got a hold of me and took me to the phone out, and I talked to Amanda, and she told me what happened. I was in disbelief, and then you're in a zone all the way home. And there's a reason that he and I were together. Anthony's his thoughts are very deep, and there was a reason that we were together. And I get home and I see the hurt in her eyes and my children, and I'm the guy that's in control. I fix things. I couldn't fix this, and it was a hole that you had no idea that existed, that you could be that low.
Grief counselors tell us that there's various stages of grief that we go through, and there's all different types of stages. People don't go through the same ones, but many times they experience similar ones like shock and anger and guilt and depression, and then that list kind of goes on. Talk a little bit about how your lives were affected in that process immediately.
Well, everything you mentioned there, plus is where I was. The shock and the grief that you had no idea could be there. I'm the youngest one in my family, and all of my siblings have gone, and I love them dearly. My parents, but that hurt. All of that doesn't fit in the equation to lose a child. The hurt, that deep scar that's in your heart, the thoughts that can I really go on from here? I look at her and I can't fix that. I look at my children, I can't fix that. Now you got to get prepared to bury a child. And how do you do that? Today, that's still the hardest thing.
It's been 21 years, but it doesn't get any easier. And you go along, and there's not a day that we don't think about Cale. There's not a day that his name isn't mentioned in our family. But we learned how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. It gets there for so long. You wake up in the morning, and that first thing, you open your eyes and you think, oh my God, we got to go another day without Cale. He's not going to be here today or tomorrow, ever. We're not going to see him. And it just gut-wrenching. It just like to pull your heart out. Then it gets to the point that you can wake up and say, Cale's not here, but we're going to see Anthony and Megan and Ned, and now the grandkids. So, we go on. We had, Cale died on November the 20th. We buried him on Monday before Thanksgiving. So we had that week. That Thanksgiving was, so many people had brought food. We ate all the leftovers out of the refrigerator. We said, we can't do this, so we just ate what we had. And I had promised Ned that we would put the Christmas tree up early that year. We were going to put it up Thanksgiving weekend, and we usually didn't put it up that early. So I'll never forget the day after Thanksgiving, he said, so we can get the Christmas tree out and start decorating today, because he was just 8. And we didn't do it that week, but we did it in a couple of weeks, I guess. But you have to go on. My first response when they told me was no. No, this is not Cale. It's not going to be our family. We can't deal with this. And I had some anger. I didn't have it right off because I thought, everybody kept saying, well, there's a plan and there's this and there's that. That's a bunch of bull. I'm sorry. I know there is now, but at that time, I was angry at God. Then I felt bad. And then somebody gave me a book and said, God's got big shoulders and he can take it. He understands how you're feeling. So it's okay to voice your anger. It's okay to be mad. But still in the back of my mind, I knew he had us. He took care of us. That's how we got through it. But it was very hard not to be angry for a while. And then I had a hard time seeing some of his friends getting married, going to school, having a good time. And I'm thinking, we should have one that's getting married and having kids about this time too. But I'm okay with that. I love all his friends and they've been so good with us. But you do go through some stages. And like I said, it's been 21 years and you don't miss, there's not a day that you don't miss him. And we talk about, one of our grandchildren's named Cale. She's named for him. And there's about 8 people of his friends that named their children after him. So I think that says a lot about how loved he was.
I'll try to finish up what I was trying to tell you a while ago when I got most of it. You asked to go through those points of how hard this is, and I said the hardest thing to this day that I've still ever done in my life was walk in there and pick out a casket for that boy. And then the first day of the viewing and walk in and, there's your child laying there and you look at your wife and children. How do I fix this? And I'm so angry. At that point, anger wasn't there. I was still in shock. But then after days go on, then you get angry. And I did. And my anger lasted for a long time. And when Amanda became pregnant with Ned, my sister Patsy told her, this is for a reason. God's got a plan. And the plan was, he was our crutch, through this. I continued going to Mass because of him, but I didn't put forth much effort because I was too mad. I was too angry. Like at God, and you come down to, to the punishment side. If I was this bad, why don't you just punish me? Why do you have to punish the whole family? I had a hard time with that. And it's not about punishment. And yes, I should have been deeper in my faith and known then that what I know now is that everything we have is a gift, and need to appreciate that every day. But at that stage you don't. Everything's going good. You're in control. Then boom. But there is life after a fact, but he's deeply missed every day.
Well, we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, Amanda and Tony will share just how their healing process began and is still going on for them now.
Not to mix pastre, Deo mix Deo, not to mix pastre, Luminix Lumine. Jesum Christum Dominum Filium Dei, not to mix pastre, Deo mix Deo, not to mix pastre, Luminix Lumine.
Welcome back to Discussions. I'm Deacon Greg Bevan, along with our guests Tony and Amanda Brown, sharing their story of the sudden loss of their loving son, Cale. Amanda and Tony, at what point, and we talked about that grieving process earlier and all the different stages you go through and the emotions, and still are for that matter, but at what point in that process did you feel a change from the terrible pain and suffering to one that seemed to offer you a little more hope and a little more healing?
I think it was our kids. We had to go on for them, and we had to have some sort of semblance of family life. And I had a friend told me, when you can go to Mass and you can walk out without crying, that's a good sign. And it took a long time before, and there's still certain hymns and songs that you hear that still can make me cry over it. But It took a while. I don't know if I could put a time on it because it would still come back. You know, you had to go through all that first year, and that was really hard. But again, I think it was the kids. We had to go on, and we had Ned at home. He was going to school. He had things to do. Megan was going on with her career, and Anthony was going on with his life. So we had to be strong for them to get through some things. And then we had a lot of friends. We had a lot of friends who, unfortunately, had gone through the same loss. And they called, and they came to us, and I think that helped me a lot when I would see that they had some sort of semblance of normal life on the outside anyway, that you could go on. So that gave me hope. Of course, people came to the funeral home and said, oh, my son's been dead for 15, 20 years, and it still hurts. And I thought, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this if it's going to last this long? And the pain's still there, but it's tolerable now. We know that Cale's fine. We're the ones that, you know, we need him, we want him, but Cale's fine.
And for me, it took a long time, and I really, after I looked at this and thought about it, and my recovery was first grandchild. My love and trust started back. First time I held her, it's kind of like boom, boom, you know, if I'm so bad, where does this come from, you know? You've got something here, it's not going to take Cale's place, but you got more love. And that was my first step back really to, I've got to change. I knew I had to change. I couldn't have this much anger in my heart. Not that I would miss Cale less, but I could grip onto this new body that's in our life and this new love. And that I can recall that. And then, you know, Joe Farrell stayed on me about coming to a men's group at Flaherty. And when I finally caved into that, you know, those guys helped me a lot. You know, started thinking more and more about, you know, I owe everything to Jesus. You know, he can take this anytime he wants it. You know, so, you know, I hope and pray that we don't have to go through this again with anybody in our family, with our children or grandchildren. I hope and pray. But there's no guarantees of anything, you know. And I don't think one's faith can be strong enough to have a loss like this that you didn't challenge your faith or challenge Jesus or challenge whatever. I think, you know, that it is such a deep hurt that you're looking for answers. And, you know, I know my faith's stronger now than it was then. But a lot of that's due to her because, you know, I can watch her and she conducted herself a lot better than I did.
You know, in Romans in 12:15, we are told to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. And I've known over the years, and I've witnessed this at many funeral homes and visitations that I go to, how, and I know many of those people, most of them are not related to you, but you all have made a special effort over the years to sharing the grief of others who have experienced the loss of a loved one. I guess my question is, how important is that to you? And then in general, with what you've gone through, how important is that for someone who has faced such a loss in their life, to have someone like yourselves who know exactly what they're going through?
Well, for me, it was like there were so many people that reached out to us that had gone through the same thing. Kitty DeVries made an effort for me to come see her and shared her faith with me and how her journey had gone. And I think that we have the responsibility and it's almost a privilege not a privilege, but we've been there. We know what they're feeling. And when people come up to you and say, oh, I know how you feel. You don't know how we feel. We don't want you to know how we feel. And I know you mean well. But the only person that knows this kind of pain or any kind of is if you've actually gone through it. And we've walked in these people's shoes and we know what they're facing. So it helped me to see other people come to us and after years, and we saw them that they were still upright and able to live a life. So I feel like that's my responsibility to help them go through this part. We can't walk the journey for them, but we can at least be there for them, to offer prayers for them and be there as a support to show that you will survive this. It's a long process and it's hard. It's the hardest thing I feel like we'll ever do. And we're still doing it every day, because bringing all this back today, which is good, but you relive it. And every time you hear another parent that's lost a child, my heart just breaks, because you know how they feel, that their heart's broken, and it's going to take a long time to get it back. But then again, I feel hope for them, because I know the Lord's going to help them get through it eventually, and it's a time process. But if we can help them in any way, that's what we want to do, because so many people reached out to help us, and they're still helping us. We still have. I look at church sometimes and I see families, and I'm thinking, oh, they've lost this one, and it's hard to believe that there's that many of us that have lost it. And a friend called me that night after Cale died and said, "You are now a member of a club that you never asked to be a member, and it was the last place you ever want to have a membership." And that's exactly right.
A lot of times though, we walk up the door and knock on it, and the couples will open the door and see us, and they just lose it, because they know.
Sure.
We know. And at that time, it's not the time to put your arm around and say, Jesus did this for a reason, or God did this for a reason. They don't want to hear that. You're there for their support. And I saw something the other day, and it was a guy talking to another fellow that just lost a child, and he'd lost a child before. And he said, the guy that told him, he said, I got good news and I got bad news. The bad news is you lost a child, and your life will never be the same. The good news is you can come out of this. You can make it. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of praying. Your life changed forever, but you can make it. And you can. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of praying. There's a lot of sacrifices. There's a lot of giving. And you need to share. And don't take it for granted.
Tony, I remember once I had a couple fathers who were dealing with the loss of a son and children. And, they reach out to me and to console them. And I remember once I thought, I can be there with them, but I don't know how to console them. And I remember calling you, and I know you remember this. Yeah. And you were gracious enough to come to Mass that morning, and they were there. And after Mass, we sat in the sacristy, and I kind of turned you over to them, and I was going to leave, and you said, "No, you can stay here." And I really do appreciate that invitation to do that, because I learned so much through the sorrow that was in that room that morning. But one thing really stuck out in my mind. You told those gentlemen the same thing, but the best description that image that I remember was, you told them, it's like blowing a hole in your heart. The hole is always going to be there. Initially it is so tender, it's almost unbearable, but the hope is eventually around that hole there will be healing, even though the hole will be there. So that's kind of what you were saying through that process, the both of you.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. How important has your faith been? And we've talked a little bit about that faith process, and how important was that through all that process? How important is your faith now? And how would a person deal with it if they didn't have some faith to fall back on?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine not having that faith to know that there was a plan, that this is all in God's hand, that He's got it all under control. He knows what we need. But to not have that feeling, I don't understand how that would be so difficult, so much more difficult, I believe.
It's not only the faith, it's got to build up. We had good relationship with our kids and with each other. And, you know, we just finished our 50-year anniversary, which is something to say. I don't see how she put up with me that long, but anyway.
Congratulations, by the way.
But, and I think that comes back to the foundation of faith she had built in her and I had made from our parents. And we instilled it, and she instilled it in our children. And, you know, they knew that you went to Mass, and that we were fortunate enough to have them go through St. John's, and they got that foundation there also. And I think it all plays in hand that you can survive this loss. Without faith, without Jesus, without her, I'd have probably already jumped off this bridge. You know, and at that time, you know, when all this hurt was going on, you know, I said one time before, I said, I can really understand how people commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have Jesus, if you didn't have family, I didn't have a spouse like I had, it would have been easy. I never contemplated it because I had that. But somebody without that would be very easy.
Well, it's been 21 years. What role does Cale still play in your life?
We talk about him all the time, you know, and Christmas and all, and all, and the grandkids know him because we talk to them about him. He had a footprint left here, and we need to make sure that, and that's one mistake some people make, is not talk about him, and then they're afraid to talk to you about your junk. I don't want to mention that you hurt your nail. Talk about him. Bring his name up. We talk about him all the time, like he's still here, you know. Mm-hmm. It is. You know, there has to be, in my reasoning through this 2 years, there has to be a reason that God took this kid at that time of his life. And my faith tells me that it was because at that time his soul was ready for heaven. So now what do we do? You know, there's a reason that he took him, and it may be the reason maybe he took this boy to save my soul, because it's made me stronger in my faith. And I came to the conclusion to myself and with prayers and all that, you know, the time that I didn't get to spend with him here on this earth was out of my hands. You know, Jesus, our God, took him 21 years ago, and I've missed that time. Now what are you going to do? I don't want to miss eternity with him. I know he's there. That's in my control. I can control that. Whether I want to be at the banquet table with him, or I don't want to mess that up. So I gravitate to that.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate you all sharing your hearts and souls with us today. And I guess my final question would be, your thoughts and suggestions and ideas that you would want to pass along to those out there who have experienced what you've experienced and are listening to this show on the loss of a loved one, especially a child.
We've all got that bond. I mean, we can look at each other. You know, I've got friends that when we meet up, when we make eye contact, it's kind of like, you're my sister, because we know what you've gone through. We know your walk. We know what you're still going through. We can't walk the walk for you, like I said, but we're here for you, to each other. I think each of us help each other. We support each other. We can vent and say whatever we feel like if we're angry or at that point in time, and there's nobody judges you, because we've all felt that at some time or other. I think sometimes I see some ladies that have lost their child, and we just walk up and hug. We don't have to say anything, because we know, and especially if we go to visitation for somebody else that's lost their child, because we know what they're going through. And I think that's what got us through so much of it, was other people who had reached out to help us. And the Lord's hand was right there, and he said, you all get through this, and don't feel like you have to keep it to yourself. If you have a bad day or something, all of us are here to help each other.
You know, I didn't seek these people out that have lost children at first, and and some of them have seeked me and came to my office, and I want to, and they know now that they're welcome. I tell them, anytime when you hit that wall, because you're going to hit it, and we hit it all the time. You got good days and you hit the wall. So when you hit that wall, come in here or call me. I'd be glad to talk. And we have several guys that stop in and just talk about our children, and I let them talk, and they want to talk about it because maybe they don't have somebody to listen to, but they have felt comfortable enough with me that they do that, and I feel very honored that they can. But we have to talk about these children because they were part of our life and they still are, but they did make a footprint when they were here, and Cale made a big one,
Well, I can certainly tell that. Well, again, thank you on behalf of Meade County Catholic Radio and our listeners, and we want to thank you for sharing this story of grief and also the healing that you've experienced and following the death of Cale. And, certainly our hope and our blessing and our wish is that Cale, and we feel confident that he's enjoying the eternal happiness and peace with God in heaven and in his kingdom. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to discussions on Meade County Catholic Radio 95.3, broadcasting from Brandenburg, Kentucky. I'm Deacon Craig Bevan. We now return to our regularly scheduled programming, now in progress.
Not to mix past trade, Deo mix Deo, not to mix past trade.